Every time African Union goes to elections in their institutions, there is always a pull and a push on which side, which continent of the continent would like to be in charge of that particular institution. There are critical examples of CDC, Pan-African Parliament, and there's so many other organizations that fall under African Union. We have had this pull and push every time there is an election. The 2017, 2018 election, where the current chairperson, Dr. Muhammad Faki from Chad, was elected, was grossly mismanaged. There was a lot of accusation of money buying countries, buying delegates, buying countries, paying foreign ministers by one country called Morocco. And indeed, they did not hide. Morocco came, saw, and conquered. But Morocco was doing a bidding on behalf of France. And later on, it appeared that the current chairperson fell in bed with the people of the French-speaking nations. Some of them have had wars since he came to power. And today they continue to have chaos. This platform has exposed and has talked about, several people have talked about what can be done. One of the speakers from South Africa said, we should give African Union chairperson the powers to make decisions without consulting very many other people or without coming with lukewarm decisions while the war continues to kill people. I do agree with him. But there is the question of capture. Our place has been captured. AU has been captured by the foreign forces that determine our agenda, that determine what we should vote for, whom we should vote in power. The election of Democratic Republic of Congo, the first term of President Tshisekedi, was a complete example of how AU has messed this continent of Africa on the question of formations. It sent observers and monitors, but later on turned out and said, these observers report no African heads of state and the government should recognize Mr. Tshisekedi. 3 days passed, Mr. Tshisekedi flew into Addis Ababa, became the chairperson of African Union, and the chairperson welcomed him as the chairperson of African Union. Such contradictions and such mistakes put our organization in bad light. Therefore, the candidates that are going to contest for this seat must take care and must take serious precaution to avoid being pocketed by external darker forces that have always wanted to dismember Africa. We have a war in DRC Congo. We have a war in Somalia. We have a war in Sudan. We have a war in Central African Republic. We have a war in Libya. Libya, as we talk, is still divided into two. We have a war in Mozambique. So we have a war. We have uncertainty in South Sudan. What shall we do as Africans to make sure that our continent is unified? We have a war, internal strife in Nigeria, where Biafra and the Southeast has a lot of issues to sort with the government in Abuja. But no help has come from African Union Commission. Not a single agenda, not a single topic has been put on agenda from Biafra or Abazonia, nothing. And yet there is serious killings of thousands and thousands of civilians that are suffering in those areas. Is it the Africa that we want? Is it the African Union that we want in 2025? The answer is no. We need a changed African Union. We need an African Union that can stand on its own. An African Union that can play its own role, that can make decisions that can fight for Africa. We don't need to have all our 54 heads of state piling themselves in planes, flying to Moscow for Africa, Moscow conference, for Africa, China conference, for Africa, America conference. Yet we have African Union. Why doesn't the African Union Secretary General go on behalf of Africa? Are these not the changes we want? Yes, they are the changes we want. We would like African Union that can fight for seats, at least 4 seats in the United Nations Security Council. The United Nations Security Council itself is fighting itself. 3 countries versus 2. What a shame that the same countries that signed in 1945, signed the Geneva, signed the Francisco Agreement, that they would uphold in 1945 peace after the Second World War, are the same countries that are violating the same United Nations Security Council. It is time that Africa moves forward and looks at what can be done to improve the situation in the African Union and hence improve the situation in the United Nations. Finally, on the conflicts that are reigning on African continent, I believe that one day, and one day alone, Africa will realize that violence does not make a better place to live in. The conflict of Sudan is worrying. Some of us have taken part. We're still persuading one side of the generals. There's hope that one day they will come on the table. But the one thing that makes me so worried is America knows these countries that supply the guns, the arms, the drones that are killing people in Darfur, that are killing people in Sudan, in Omdurman. Why doesn't America reprimand them? I leave the answers and the guesses to you. If I had a child, another one going to study international relations as a subject, I would tell that child that there is no subject called international relations except international interests. That subject which I teach, which I learned, which I know very well by the head as I speak without notes, is a subject of international interest. Because America knows where these terrorists are. They know. How then do you go and negotiate? You are negotiating for release of some of the hostages. But you know who is holding them. You have their offices. If you walk in Doha, for example, the whole of Doha, if you read Arabic, you'll see offices of Taliban. You'll see offices of Al-Shabaab. Now, Boko Haram, one wonders why, if there is any African country that can host an office of a terrorist group, and that country will not be bombed in a second, I can bet I'll give you $1 million. But why have we allowed these countries to host people who come to kill us when Africa is peaceful? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for attending this platform. That ends my editorial comment.